My name is Jonathan Gillum.
And this is The Experts. This is Jonathan Gillum, and this is The Experts on Facebook Live, Twitter, and YouTube, and seen by millions and millions of people, I guess. I don't know. Not on YouTube, that's for sure, because they love to censor. But today, great show. We're going to talk to former New York Jets, amazing man, Burgess Owens. He's got a book that is out, and we're going to talk about that book. And also, we're going to talk about the president's speech that he did today at the UN, and how it was a great speech. I got to tell you, look, he's not the greatest speaker in the world, but the substance of what he said needed to be said, and I think that is what is most important here. And I think that I think what's going to come out, I don't know what's going to come out. You can't tell anymore. Our politics are so bad in this country that you got people, our own politicians, belittling his speech, which is crazy to me. Let's talk about that in just a second. We're going to have Burgess on. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. All right, so I'm having a malfunction with my laptop that I do the Skype on, so I'm trying to fix that at the same time that we're talking here. And I think I may have gotten it here. So, with Trump's speech, I got some highlights for it that I got off of YouTube. And let me copy this real quick. Stand by. And, boy, I tell you what, I love Mac products, but when they go bad, they're just gone. You can't even hope that they'll come back. They're just done. And they move so slowly. All right. Let's see here. Trying to look to add my good friend Burgess on here, but this thing is moving so slow that, let's see here. We'll figure it out while I'm talking. Okay, so anyway, let me play some of Trump's speech here. That'll be good. We'll play the highlights of that. And then in just a second, we'll get Burgess on. So let's play, let's start with some highlights here. I may have to jump back into this in just a second, but let's go ahead and start with it now.
As President of the United States, I will always put America first. Just like you, as the leaders of your countries, will always and should always put your countries first. As long as I hold this office, I will defend America's interests above all else. In America, we do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example for everyone to watch. The United States has great strength and patience, but if it is forced to defend itself or its allies, we will have no choice but to totally destroy North Korea. Rocket Man is on a suicide mission for himself and for his regime. The United States is ready, willing, and able, but hopefully this will not be necessary. We will...
Okay, so one thing I want to talk about there, and I guess everybody's hearing this okay, one thing about the speech that he made and some of the things that he said, including that, was that he always gives an out for when he is telling people exactly how stuff is going to happen. Burgess just called me. I'm going to call him back right now. I don't know if he's watching this or not. But that's the thing about the president, is that when Trump makes a direct, I don't even want to say it's a threat. It's an ultimatum. It's saying that we can eliminate or destroy North Korea. He also gives an out, and that is a sign of a great negotiator and an incredible leader in the world. The fact that he doesn't just say, we're going to destroy you, bring it on. He says, we're going to destroy you, but we don't want to do that. Let me see, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Let me see. Let me call him back here real quick. Stand by 1 second. Here we go. Let me pull you up here. Again, I do all this. This isn't Newsmax where you saw me that day. This is me doing all this stuff on my own. So, but here,
I'm impressed. You're much further ahead in the game than I would be. Believe me.
Well, I'm telling you, it is. This is a learning process, but at the same time, I think this is the way that media is going. Is that we're getting a voice of our own now.
Absolutely agree, and I love it. I absolutely love it. It's the text age. Is what Trump is doing around the other media. The same thing. So I just want to make sure.
So let me just, I'm pretty sure, especially since I'm in New York, most people know who you are. New York Giants, Super Bowl champion. Go ahead.
It was actually the Jets.
I said Giants. I meant Jets.
Jets and then Raiders.
I was having a discussion with somebody just a minute ago about the Jets versus Giants and that whole thing, and that's why I said Giants. But what did you ever think? When you were there and you were playing professional football, did you see your future leading to where you are now? And did you see? I'm telling you, I was amazed listening to you on Newsmax the other day, because everything that we say on this show, it was as if you were reading my mind about communism. Did you see that stuff, and how did you come about knowing what you know about all this?
And I must say this, I was just fortunate to grow up at the right time in the 60s, and a very proud family. And with all that being said, they taught us how to think, number one, to ask those questions why. And then over the years, I've watched as my great community has gone downhill, become less patriotic, less Christian, less entrepreneurial, less family. And I couldn't understand that the problem was that there was liberals. They had liberals that was doing it to us. So it's just a process. And I'm just thankful to finally have a forum that I can actually give my thoughts and let other people know what they should be aware of, particularly.
Right. And did you so when you were growing up, though, and you got into this whole into this process of where you're now speaking out about this stuff, I'm having technical difficulties at the same time I'm talking to you, so that's why I'm all over the place working this thing.
Now, John, are we online yet? Are we?
Yeah, we're live right now. So
okay,
yeah. So at the same time we're talking, I'm like doing the technical stuff and producing the show. I got the whole thing out here in front of me. So
okay.
When you what's happening now, though, with communism, it kind of got seeded in the 60s. Some people say you can go back to 1912. I know we've had Michael Jackson, former FBI agent, came on here and was talking about that. In the 60s, though, it got integrated into modern, really into the modern day equal rights movements and these types of things, as Yuri Brezhnev talked about, that any of the isms, feminism, any of these types of things, it got involved with to subvert this country. But when did you actually start to see this? Because I'm not going to lie, and I've told people this before, I just recently started to see it, and maybe that's because it's become so apparent over the past year. But how long have you seen this?
You know, that's a very good question, because I grew up as a Democrat, because in my community we just thought Democrats were all about us and helping the black race. It was actually when I left the NFL and I began to run my own business and talk with successful men and women across the country that I recognized that liberalism was our problem. And then over time, because of the time I grew up, I've always had a passion as I watched my parents, my dad's commitment to our race and to kids, that I just have bought into it. So in that process, you want to become educated. You want to know what the problems are so you can find out how the solutions come about. And what I recognize is that what has happened to the black race is actually a prototype of what the liberals are doing to our country. You see, back in 1910 is where our problems began. Back in 1910, 50 years, 60 years after slavery, we were as a race succeeding. We were the first race to put together a national business network. We had over 50 millionaires in one town outside of Tulsa, Oklahoma. Private planes, movie theaters. We had the very first female self-made millionaire was a black woman in 1915. So we were a community that was very focused on succeeding because we had a Christian base, very patriotic. And then here comes the NAACP. For those audience out there, NAACP was started by 21 white socialist, atheist, Marxist, race-controlled Democrats.
Well, let me say something real quick before you go on that.
Yeah.
It didn't the same thing. Black Lives Matter is similar, where it started with 3 female Marxists.
Well, yeah. Well, Black Lives Matter, and all that stuff. I have to understand. There's a programming that's been going on for about 20 years in the black community. It's called BET, Black Entertainment News, Black Entertainment Television, owned by white liberals, Viacom, for the last 15, 20 years.
Right.
And the community and the message that they got once they purchased the station for $3 billion, they could have had an opportunity to give positive messaging to our black community. But what they did, they gave anti-white, anti-American, anti-flag, anti-capitalism, anti-family. And what you see on the streets all across our country is that result of these kids growing up with a negative message from BET, white liberals who have bred our race, my race, for their vote. So this is the way these guys do it. And that's what we have to understand as a country. It is not a black and white issue. It's not a rich and white and rich and poor issue. It's atheists, socialists, liberals, and communists, the Marxists, that are actually against the our American way, the free enterprise and Judeo-Christian value way. So if we understand that, then we realize that we have very, very wealthy black people that are just as dangerous to us as a race as KKK was. Right. They are taking part in killing more black children, 1,800 babies per day, than the KKK could have ever done. So it's truly an ideology we're fighting. And if we want to understand what we don't need to do, please look at the black community, understand the misery happening within our race. And you see that's what liberals do to everyone once they get hold of it.
Now, let me ask you, I just put your book up here, Liberalism, or How to Turn Good Men into Whiners, Weenies, and Wimps. I love that. That explains so much about the reality of, at the same time they are integrating themselves, the communist ideology, into different, whether you want to call races, sexualities, genders. At the same time they do that, they're also turning the American people through, it's funny you say Viacom, through media that starts at a very young age. The Hannah Montana shows, the Disney shows, which Viacom, I think, at one time owned all of those. They still do. Okay, so
Nickelodeon, Nickelodeon, name it. Exactly.
Nickelodeon, MTV, CMTV. I remember when CMTV, or CMT, it's country music television, started changing and getting almost into like the MTV type of just weirdness. And then it goes all the way up into where NBC and all these different things. But it really does take away the empowerment from people where they won't even say anything. Like with the transgender issue in the military, people are afraid to simply state, it is not an effective thing for a fighting force to have to deal with people who have such a high suicide rate or are medically dependent. You can't even say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is where, understand where this begins. Karl Marx, the founder of socialism, a very, very evil ideology, by the way. Mm-hmm. And we have to understand, around the world, that has never worked out because always an elitist crowd that always uses dependence and use misery to keep them in place. So here's what Karl Marx said about the strategy. He says the first battleground is the rewriting of history.
Right.
So what my book really talks about is what the real history of Black Americans are, what the real history of our country has been. Our country is the one place in which people come here and they leave behind where they came from to become Americans. Mm-hmm. We begin to look at each other from inside out, not outside in. We take pride in our history and our flag and our culture and the way we support people. That's who we are. That's who we become as Americans.
Right.
Well, in order to change that around, the elitists, the leftists need to undermine that pride. So they take away our history and they then point to their racism as our racism. They look at the party of Democrats. Keep in mind what the Democratic Party has always been. The Democratic Party has been the party of secession, slavery, segregation, and socialism. Mm-hmm. It is today the same party of secession, slavery, socialism, and segregation. Look at the Black community, and you see exactly that.
Well, that's what I was talking about the other day when I was asking somebody a question about, for instance, Black Lives Matter or the NAACP. You never see them organizing marches in the inner city to stop gang violence or to build the relationship between the cops and the inner city. You never see that. It's like, or to let's get families back in order. And I got to tell you, I've said this for a long time. I don't recognize color. I know that I believe in cultures, and I know that there's some physical differences. They've done studies where on people with dark skin versus light skin, and they have higher degrees of testosterone, for instance. The SEAL teams, believe it or not, did a study once, and they tried to find out why there wasn't more men coming through the training pipeline that had dark skin. They found out that Black people are born with more dense bone structure, and so they don't float as well, which could explain a lot of the reasons why people are always joking around that Black people don't like to swim. It could be just the sheer fact that there are some physical differences in different people, but I don't look at any difference in race. I look at that as a product of where we grew, where our ancestors are from in a particular area, so our bodies had to adapt to that area, whether it be something in the cold or something in the heat, and that's the way genetics change. But I don't see a difference in race. I don't see myself. I can't put an electrode up to my skin and your skin and get any brain waves whatsoever. There may be, so anyway, I guess the whole point I'm trying to make throughout this whole explanation is that poverty knows no color. Poverty knows no gender, no race. It doesn't care how successful you've been. If you get into poverty, it is like a cancer that you are trying to crawl out of. And I think that is the real aspect of this whole communist movement. They focus on people who are in poverty, and they focus on taking people into it by allowing them to be dependent. And ultimately, that's what the hook is.
And that's the way it works. What we have to understand as a country, and it's been difficult because progressives have taken over education. John Dewey, by the way, is a white socialist, Marxist, atheist back in the early 1900s. Also a board member, by the way, of NAACP. He's the father of progressive education. He's also the founder of ACLU and kicked God out of the school system. So these are the kind of people that NAACP started with. But they have a long game. And that's where their advantage has been over those of us who are Christian-based, conservatives, love our country. We can just go about our work, doing our thing, trying to be as fair as we can be, trying to learn as we can, and every generation getting better. But these guys have a very stealth way and a very devious way of doing their deal. So they come into the fight not being honest. I call it the Trojan horse. And then they do their thing because they look at the long-term goal, which is to destroy our country. We have a country that's been so unique because of the values we begin with, starting off with the Constitution, the Mayflower Compact, the Judeo-Christian values that we've always stood for. Once we stop teaching those values, there's a void. And that void allows those guys to come in and teach their values. Anti-family, anti-country, anti-God, everything you can do to destroy and make people miserable. Because at the end of the day, you're hitting it on the head. Socialists and communists and Marxists love each other at the top. They love their high class, their royalty class.
Right.
And they will love each other at that top, but they also use anybody who falls down below them. And they use them to keep themselves where they are. So that's what we have to be careful about and be aware of.
So, I just want to explain something real quick. When I was saying that stuff a second ago, the reason I was pointing those physical characteristics out is because they utilize these things to separate us. So yeah, one person is racist against another one, but we can't even point out physical differences about ourselves because they want to turn that into racial statements. They want to turn everything into a divisiveness. And I was on C.L. Bryant's show about 30 minutes ago. I think you've been on his radio show before. So he asked me a question about Nancy Pelosi or earlier this week, maybe it was just yesterday or the day before, but she got surrounded by a bunch of dreamers, and they were screaming at her and shut her down. And what's funny about that is that communists utilize people like the dreamers, people like individuals in the inner city or poverty-stricken people. They use them just like they did in the days of Lenin and Stalin, like they used the working class to rise up against the bourgeoisie. But what communism ultimately does is it then shuts down the people that it uses to help divide and conquer whatever they want. So the same people that are surrounding Nancy Pelosi are the same people that communists will kill if they get into power, because those people are going to be causing the major problems, and they're not going to put up with it.
Well, I'll say one thing that I'm an eternal optimist. This country was put on this earth for a reason, to be the standard for freedom, and it showed to me back November 8th of last year that America still steps up to the plate to do what we need to do when the time is appropriate, and we will always be the standard. We will win. At the end of the day, it's going to be Americans who have the conversation, to have the courage to speak up. They have the courage to understand that people calling your names doesn't mean anything. But we put a priority on our country, our families, and our culture more than we do on people liking us. So we have enough Americans that feel that way, that are proud of who we are, and therefore the communists and the Marxists and the liberals, they're not going to win. What's so frustrating with them right now is they're so close. They came so close to getting their way when they had 8 years of a socialist black president who care less about black people, by the way. Black people are in worse shape today than they ever have been after 8 years of a president who made nothing but promises and put his priorities everywhere else but. Because he needs to have black people voting for Democrats, white and black Democrats, to keep their elitist class where they are.
Right.
So they betrayed us in a big way. But because they're so in your face, so arrogant, that there are actually black Americans asking those questions now. What happened? How did this happen? Yes, there are people who are very angry. There are people not thinking. But there's a bigger group of people, that needed people, that are asking the right questions. And they're beginning to have the courage to stand up and say, you know what? I'm not going to vote for those guys anymore. They've shown me that they don't come through. It's time to switch and be free agents and look for our best interests versus the interests of these political elitists.
You know, it's interesting that you're bringing all this up, and I think it's very, very timely right now. And I had Diamond and Silk on last night and was asking them the same questions. Do you believe that this recognition of the people being separated and being used, is this, so we see it, right? You and I see it. Is this something, though, that is growing for people that have predominantly voted Democrat, or people that live in the inner city, for people that are, have a minority status? Are they starting to see this, or is the country, in your eyes, the citizenry, so asleep that and so inundated by Viacom and TV and the smartphone that they're just completely out of touch and by whatever narrative they're being told?
No, I have a lot of faith in this country, and again, that faith came true to me when I woke up on November 9th and found out we had voted for elected Donald Trump versus Hillary Clinton. So no, we're still awake. What all Americans need to know is we're in a fight. Mm-hmm. And until we know we're in a fight, we kind of just go along and to get along. Mm-hmm. Once we know we're in a fight, we win. So that's what we're in the process of doing now. We're beginning to win. And I'll tell you what I'm seeing. I'm so uplifted. You have all those minority groups, all those people that have been kind of pegged by the Democrats to make miserable so they can vote for Democrats. They're now beginning to wake up. Mm-hmm. Women, minorities, across the board, they begin to wake up and realize that freedom is more important than anything else. That's why, by the way, the left, the Democrats, are willing to bring in any kind of illegal. I mean, it doesn't matter. Legals from every place, criminals, they don't care. Terrorists, it makes no difference. They want the vote. They want to bring as many as they can because they can no longer depend on the 93% of black Americans that are voting for them, because that number is going to go down to 90, then 85, then 80. Right. My goal is to make it 75, 60, 50. Right. Where they have no power until they come to the plate and actually bring value, which they're incapable of doing. Marxists and liberals and socialists cannot bring value. They have no idea how to do it because their religion is an ideology that hurts people. Mm-hmm. So once that happens, and I'm not telling people they need to be Republicans. My whole goal is very simple. I talk about it in my book. Become an independent. Be a political independent, a free agent. Yeah. Yeah. Be somebody that everybody needs to come to you and ask what is in your best interest, and you hold them accountable. And if they don't do the job, you fire them or you don't hire them. But once we become political free agents, they will never be able to use the black race again. And I'll tell you what, there are a lot of black Americans waking up today. They're recognizing that when you have 83% of black teen males unemployed, when you have black entrepreneurship that went from 40% back when I was growing up to 3.8% because of policies like the Davis-Bacon Act. When you look at 80% of abortion centers being placed in black communities and 1,800 black babies being killed every single day, there's going to be a wake-up call. And those black Americans who truly love our country, love our race, and love being American, they're going to hold these guys accountable, and they will never, ever have the chokehold that they've had over our race for the last 30, 40, 50 years. So we're coming back. I feel great about our country. I feel great about Americans who are listening right now. They're going to do their homework. They're going to start asking the question, does this party represent me when it kicks God out of their what was it, a year ago, they had their convention. Mm-hmm. They've kicked God off the national off their platform. Right. Now, what kind of Christian, I don't care what party, what kind of Christian is going to stay in a party that kicks out God off their platform and then boo and hiss when they want to put him back on? Right. That to me says we have to ask ourselves some very serious questions as Americans. Who are we? You know, what is truly our priorities? Mm-hmm. Is it about a party, about a person, about a politician, or is it about our values and tradition? And if it's about God and our values and our culture, we need to wake up and start voting the right way and stop being just being a lemon voting for a party because they tell us they're going to do the right thing. Right. Wake up, guys. Educate ourselves.
I mean, that's what's funny about that is they've been saying, you know, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But you look, our inner cities have gotten more dangerous and more poverty-stricken. The family process around the country, this has nothing to do with color. Families in general are broken down now. People are they don't help each other out. Most people in big cities don't even know their neighbors anymore, let alone in the countries, in the rural areas. But we have gotten to a point where the ruling class in this country, Michael Reagan was on Newsmax with me 2 weeks ago, and he said that if the country was to turn communist, it would only take the Republican establishment a week longer than the Democrats to turn. Yeah. And that was coming from him. That was profound, because as I speak all over this country and go to speak to Republican groups, and I've had Democrats come in and sit in these speeches. The reality is there is no there is no bond anymore between the establishments in these different these two parties and with the people. The people don't see eye to eye with these parties, yet those two parties, private companies, own every single seat of government and power in the United States. Every single one.
Yep. And Johnson, that's why this is such a sea change with Americans electing for the first time a non-politician, someone who doesn't come across as smooth as Obama did with all his glib promises and nice ways of saying things. He's a doer. He's a business owner. He's someone who's going to be in your face and tell him that this is what I expect and I want America to be number one again. That is a very, very fresh and renewing voice. And because it is, you're going to have Democrats and Republicans coming from those parties coming to vote and support a person like that and what in his agenda he's putting together. So again, you're right. We're not talking about the Republican Party of the Reagan anymore. We're talking about political politicians that they're going to look at doing their best for themselves and make promises. But I feel strongly that those days are changing. As of November 9th, our country stood up, and I'm sure we had a lot of praying going on the night before. But we stood up. We said, "This is what we're going to be. We're going to be doing something quite different now. It's time for a radical change." And I tell you what, the president we have today, I tell you what got my attention. He's the first politician to talk about making a change in the Black community. He has 10 points in which he talks about doing what he's going to do to make a change, right, bringing jobs, bringing hopes again. No other politician talked about it. And guess what? The left wants to stop him. The last thing the left wants to do is have him be successful in the Black community, giving jobs, giving hope, stopping the abortion, stopping the killing. If he stops that, and he's giving credit, guess who they're going to vote for? They're going to be voting for Donald Trump next time. And the Democrats hate the idea. They would rather see people suffer than to see another person outside their party elected. That's the evil heart, the heart of the Democratic Party. They love misery. The only way they get elected, the only way they stay elected, the only way they get their power is giving misery. Trust them. And so we have to understand that. Like I did years ago, I turned away from the Democratic Party. I will never, ever go back. And if the Republican Party did the same thing, I'll turn away from them too. Yeah.
Well,
so it's all about freedom and opportunity.
I agree with you, though, what you said earlier, that effective thinking is not a party thing. Party thing is, look, they do serve somewhat of a purpose in getting people together so that the people still stand together. But ultimately, what they end up creating is what you saw in the Old Testament when the Jews were wandering through the desert, screaming out for a king instead of wanting to walk with God. Ultimately, what you get is a bunch of people, this country, just following leaders. And not necessarily, well, I should take that back, following the ruling class, not necessarily following leaders.
Yeah.
And it's, I don't know, we're at this weird place where there's an awakening happening, but at the same time, unless we can completely learn to utilize this social media to get around the Viacoms, the CNNs, the Time Warners, all these different groups, if we continue to learn how to use social media, I believe it is the only way we are going to be able to unify this country, because we're so spread out. There's so many people, and there's so many lies being told. This is going to be it, I think.
I agree. And I don't think there's an accident all this happens. We're a country of innovators. We're a country of options and freedom. So it's just it makes sense that in a country like ourselves, we'll give each other opportunities to have more ways of communicating in better ways than one. That's the beauty of free enterprise.
Yeah.
And it was driving these guys nuts on the left. They really thought they had it. They thought they had the entertainment. They thought they had the media. They had the presidency. They had Hillary. They were going to do their thing and really mess this country over. Yeah. And they're finding out that free people do not allow themselves to be taken like that. So we are communicating like we are right now, Jonathan. We're also doing things across the board. Mm-hmm. We're getting around. President Trump is tweeting around the media. It's driving them nuts. Yeah. So we just have to keep that up and ask the right questions and continue to study and educate ourselves, guys. If I can just say that one thing to your audience, education is the greatest threat to slavery. And that's why the slave owners have always tried to keep us uneducated. 70%, keep this in mind, in the state of California, 70% of black young boys are illiterate. And no one's talking about it. Wow. So what does that mean? 70%. And this is the liberal bastion of our country. And there are black Americans who are okay with that because it keeps them in power. That to me irks me to no end. Because these kids are going to grow up with no hope, no chance, and listening to the and being manipulated emotionally. Yep. So they go out there and demonstrate and riot and get killed, all for a cause of democratic liberalism. So we have to understand where we're at this point.
I truly believe, though, that they would have that the communist movement in this country would have that be the case if they could find a way, and they will find a way eventually, to get to every group of people. You know, they divide them, and then they belittle them or they push them down. And I think I think just because of the sheer nature of the way this country grew and the way equality came, that was in the 60s. They were able to integrate their ideology ever so slowly into the communities. I think Dinesh D'Souza played it out perfectly in his movie about how they turned the inner city into plantations, really.
That's exactly right.
And then, but also they went into the educational sector, which is why the education budget is so big. The Department of Education is so important to the leftists, is because not because they think that's what it takes to educate people. That's what it takes to continue to make that it's so powerful and they can control it, and with their ideologies secreted in there. But I guess what I was trying to say is that I think ultimately they don't really care about or even recognize race or gender or anything else any further than they can use it. And once they use it, it doesn't really matter. It's just another stepping stone for power. That's it.
Well, and this is what happens. We really are. It's really a kind of a simple process when you break it down. I mean, sounds very complicated with all the different groups and whatever, but it comes right down to one simple thing. Our country is built on God-centered values, Judeo-Christian values. We've looked to God along the way. We've sought His help. We've sought His blessings. And in the process, we begin to look at each other from inside out, not outside in. We become Americans. I don't care whether we're from Africa or Europe. We become Americans. That's the way this country, the culture of this country. Then there's the other side, the anti-God, the atheists, the Marxists, the liberals, the socialists. And at the end of the day, they are totally different in the way they approach things. They don't serve, they take. They are parasites. They pull every bit of hope that people have and leave them nothing behind as they empower themselves. So if we understand what we're up against and realize a lot of these kids, unfortunately, these kids that are these multimillionaires that are sitting on the sideline, raising their fists, living the dream, having the ability to do anything they want to, but knowing next 6 months when they're doing off season, they're going to do nothing. Because they've done their part in their minds. In their part, they sat down, and that's all it takes to win. See, that's the problem that we have to solve as black Americans, black conservative Americans. Get back in there and teach these kids what it is to be givers and not takers, to be responsible men and not weenies, whinies, and wimps. So we have to do that. But at the same time, white Americans need to, first of all, realize you need to stop apologizing. No more apologizing. It's a put down to every one of our ancestors who brought this country to where it is. We have the first black president of 8 years, and 70% of NFL players, multimillionaire black athletes. There's nothing to apologize for. And black Americans need to learn our history and recognize that we were not hapless waiting for somebody to take care of us like the left would like us to believe. We were kicking butt. We were leading our country in the ways we could in our segregated community because we're proud of ourselves, and we have nothing to apologize for. And every time somebody says that, it's a put down to my parents and my grandparents, my great-great-grandparents who succeeded. So to stop the apologizing, let's be proud of who we are, recognize that if we're not being taught our history, man, let's start firing some people. Let's start getting some more charter schools out there where kids can go to, where they can learn our history and not be segregated in these poor, failing schools where they're not learning anything. So we can do our part. We just have to, I call it manning up, man. Man up and women up. We need to do something and get out there and make a difference. Not be afraid of being called names. The last thing we need to be worried about is people calling us names.
You know, and I know you probably got to go here in a second. You can stay on here as long as you want. Well, anytime you want to come on, as long as you want to be on, we'll put you on. But I you know, having gone through SEAL training, a friend of mine, Jake Zawig, you know, he's black. I've seen other black SEALs, Black Blue Angel, a guy who is black, who is a Blue Angel. But the thing about SEAL training is you're forced to look inside your own soul and make a judgment call on whether you're going to go forward or not. It has nothing to do with your color. When you look at your soul on the inside, there's no color to that soul. And in fact, the reality is color only goes a couple of skin layers under. I've seen a guy get completely road rash on a motorcycle crash, and he was as white as I was if you took the top layer of skin off. The thing is, Jake Zawig and all the other guys and myself and anybody else, no matter what race, no matter where you came from, ultimately what made any of these guys SEALs and what makes a human being great is if they can look inside themselves, identify their maker, and then push forward to be the best that they can be, no matter what. You know, that's the key to it. Absolutely agree, Jonathan.
And I'm going to take it, you know, I didn't get a chance to serve my country. My dad did. He served in World War II, and the thing he's most proud of, the most proud decision he ever made was volunteering to go to the war. And he came back to got the GI Bill, went and got his PhD at Ohio State, had a very successful life, middle class, traveled around the world. Very proud of being Americans. My experience has been on the football field, because at the end of the day, you're all about winning, and you could care less about the color of the guy next to you, his religion. You could care less. You just want him to show up, do his job, make sure he's adding value to the team and not distracting from the team.
Right.
And as a player, my goal very simply was not to let my guys down. And I could care less whether they're white or black. I didn't want to let my guys down. That's the American way. And we have to understand that we're in a battle for the soul, the very soul of our country. And we have young 8-year-old black kids now kneeling because they don't have black mentors, black men to tell them to stand up, be proud, fight through it, and stop whining. They don't have black men that's going to tell them that. They have black men that will sit and kneel with them as if it's some kind of badge of honor to put down our flag and our history. So we have to understand that's what we're fighting against. And we need to get more men out there, period. Particularly in the black community, boy. We need to really get our guys to man up, because they're really failing our community in a big way for a long time.
Let me ask you this. I was watching last year during the election process. I'm forgetting the guy's name now, but he's on CNN, and he said that you know, in order for a young black person to become a doctor, they need to know they have met or seen a black doctor. I don't agree with that. I mean, I think that a person can be the best that they want to be if they're taught that intrinsically, regardless if there's anybody else.
Well, it sounds to me like a racist. We're way past that. Yeah. Listen, we're way past, we're decades past having to see someone like ourselves to believe we can do it. We're in America. And if we're doing our things right, the color should not matter. It should be we're competing to be the best we can be. Yeah. And we have a friend of ours who is good, and a lot of it is just who do we surround ourselves with. If I'm surrounding myself with people of all backgrounds and colors that are winning, and I'm competing with them, that's my standard.
Yeah.
If I'm raised by a good dad who teaches me how to be a man, how to respect women, how to continue to get up when you fall down. That's all. And I don't care if my dad had to be white or black. If he's my dad, he's teaching me principles.
Right.
And that's what I need to know as I get out in the marketplace. I use those principles I've been taught, and I go out and I win.
Yeah.
And I come back with the attitude that I'm not going to let my family down. I'm not going to let my dad, my mom down. I'm not going to let my race down. I'm going to let my country down. That's what America's all about. So I'm really sick and tired of the liberal, the left, always calling others racist, as they are the most racist you can find. Everything with them is the difference, the exterior difference.
Right.
They're the first to divide us, and they call, with no shame, call everybody else a racist.
Yeah.
So first, I'm sick of it, and I think Americans need to start voting against people that do that, so that eventually get the message. If we keep letting them stay in office, they're empowered to keep doing what they're doing. So let's put America first, guys.
So I got
great again.
I got two more questions for you, and I'll let you go. I
Okay.
mean, and again, you can stay in here as long as you want. But first and foremost, how do you feel about Colin Kaepernick? And I want you to tell everybody the reality of the NFL and the fact that it's a private organization, and freedom of speech, when people say that Colin Kaepernick is exercising his freedom of speech, how when you work for a private company, you have to follow their policies.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's two parts of this. And let me start off with Kaepernick, first of all. And here's where the left does their thing. You see, they felt he would be a good person to use, even though he's no longer working. He will not work again. He's going to lose a lot of money in his future. So again, he's going to be in a pond. The next few years, you'll see just how miserable his life's going to be. But they were trying to get elected. They were trying to get Hillary elected. And what the left needs when that happens, they need to invigorate their base. They need to get people angry. They need to have riots. They need to have people killing police. Mm-hmm. They have to have all the misery so they get their base out. And Kaepernick had to be part of it. So I understand that. That's what the left does. Now, on the other side of it is that NFL just happens to be a leftist organization. The reason the way they put up with it is because they're in with the Democrats and making this work. Understand that these are the same people that will find a player for dancing in an end zone. Imagine that. They will find a player for putting a decal on his uniform. All expression of that's all free expression.
Right.
They will find a player for putting on a sock that doesn't fit the uniform. Mm-hmm. But yet they'll have these guys sit on the sand line or raise their fists, disrespect our flag, our past, and say that they have freedom of speech. We can't say anything about it. It's typical liberal white elitists. They kind of look at blacks as being a special breed we can't insult. We have to be so careful. White privilege, mm-hmm. which is an insult to every black American who's ever succeeded in life. They're saying, by the way, white privilege is a code word for people who believe that their color is more superior than my color. Mm-hmm. Understand that's what it is. Yeah. They think because they were white, they were born white, they have advantages, they're superior than I am. Well, let's compete. Let's see how far that goes. But let's get on the football field, let's get in the classroom, and let's compete. And I don't want anybody who says that, I don't want anything to have. I want nothing of. Because in my mind, they're total failures. They'll never succeed.
Do you think, though, Burgess, that, I mean, because you're saying, first off, you're saying some things that I have not heard anybody say, and I'm so glad that you're saying about the NFL being a part of this, because I've thought for the longest time something was up with the NFL. Yeah. But when you say white elitists, I think that was a term that you use. Is it just a white putting a black down, or is this like, for instance, with the NAACP and I forget the guy's name. I'm thinking of it. Who is in the Democratic Party? Who's a big mouth in the Democratic Party?
Are we looking at John Lewis, or are we talking about Sharpton or Jackson?
No. He's actually a senator or congressman. Gosh dog it, what is his name? I'll think of his name here in a minute. But there are black people that are they run in the same circles. Yeah. Are they lock and step and just as powerful as you think, or is there in your mind and your observations this quote unquote white elitists, are they separate, or are they all working together, or are they pawns for each other?
No, elitists are together. Elitists are elitists, black and white elitists. Mm-hmm. They'll call them royalty class. They're all together. They're socialists, and they love each other. I mean, you get in a little community, they're a little integrated community, hug and hug each other and tell each other how great they are. But they only succeed by making sure there's a dependency class. And when you look at the 1960s, when the black Americans, there was about 40% of black Americans part of the black middle class. Because in a segregated community, keep this in mind, all the resources, all the wealth, all the income, and the actual investment in the kids stayed within that community. So you wonder why they were so successful, because the best stayed there. Well, what elitists do, that middle class was squeezed at the middle in the 60s as the black family was impacted, and as successful black people left the black community to go and live with white people. You know, that was the message of the NAACP. Is the only way you can really be successful is you buy from white companies, you live in a white neighborhood, you go to a white school, even though all your black friends are in the black community. That was the NAACP, and too many people bought onto it. So what happened is the black community suffered. Jobs were lost when all of a sudden they weren't integrating, by the way, into great black schools, which are a bunch of them.
Right.
They're only integrating outside. So black coaches, black teachers, black businesses all went under as they integrated out of our community into white communities.
Right.
Understand that was not a good thing for the black community. And if we had gone the route of Booker T. Washington, which very simply, don't worry about forcing anybody to accept you. Go ahead and develop value, build businesses, build an industry, build your moral structure, build a family, and people want to be with you. They will automatically be drawn to who you are. You don't have to force anything. And if we're going that route, we wouldn't be having the conversation we have today. We wouldn't have the absolute misery that Democrats have brought to my community over the last 60 years. So if I can just leave this last message to your audience, Jonathan and I, and I'd love to come back. Sure. At the end of the day, it comes down to this. You have a forum. It's a team effort. You have a forum. I have a message. Across the board, that's where Americans have always done it. Go back through our history. Look at the first martyr for the cause of freedom in our country was a black man. We can go through every single chapter of our history together, and it's Americans working together across the board, cross religion, to make things happen. So let's understand that as long as we're working together, as long as we don't let them divide us, and as long as we figure out a way to get back into the community and give our message, we cannot allow the liberals to own and control all the messages that goes into these communities. We have to figure out ways creatively, as entrepreneurs, as capitalists, to get in there and give these people options. Charter schools and private schools is a great start, because as soon as we get them away from that progressive, evil education, our kids can grow up thinking that they can be the best that this country can offer. So I just want to tell Americans out there, let's go back and get our history together, guys. We have too much to be proud of to let those guys put us down and make us feel sorry for our past. Yeah. We got it. If we get it done, we'll be just fine, and we'll do what we always do as a country. We will always win. Yeah. We just have to understand who our enemy is.
Listen, I'll tell you, and I'll let you go. One of the biggest things that you are saying, and just the person that you are, is you don't have to serve in the military to serve the country. And that's the thing I always try to tell people is, okay, there's people trying to change our past. Let's make our future. Let's serve together. I got this thing that I started with this with the people that watch this show called the Constitutional Quick Reaction Force, the CQRF. So if anybody's ever being attacked online, we try to get people together and go on there and just go after them and hashtag CQRF, just as a way to get people to practice, to work together, and to unify. But I think having you on, it's a perfect example of somebody who has diligently served their country, raised an incredible family, had a successful career, had a great father that showed him the way, and believes in the Father, God in heaven above. And yeah. you were a man that doesn't sway from any of that. You're not worried about it. You're not a weenie or a wimp or a whiner. You're somebody who sticks straight to your values, and that to me is ultimate service, not only to God but to your country. And I thank you for that.
Thank you, Jonathan. I just leave this what you just said a minute ago. You don't have to play football to do that. You know, guys, in our own homes, in our own families, our own communities, we can all man up. We can all women up. And we can serve our country the very best we can with what we're given. So let's do that. And in the end of the day, we win like we always have. So thanks again, Jonathan. Look forward to getting together with you again. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with you.
You got it, Burgess. And if I don't see you on Newsmax next, hopefully I'll see you here again.
Take care, buddy. Sounds good. Take care.
God bless. Okay. All right, folks. Burgess Owens, what a great guy. That is the spirit right there of a winner. That is the spirit of an American. That's what America was made by. You know, I've said this before, and I hope nobody took what I said earlier about the differences in individuals. Whoops, hold on a second here. Hold on. when I talked about there it goes. When I talk about the differences between people and their the characteristics, I can't do two things at once, as you see. I got to try to get this color set again. When we talk about the differences, and as I was saying there earlier, the difference between physical characteristics, all right? We are all born with legacies of people that come from some area. Oh my gosh, that was painful. That come from some other area in the world, right? Your ancestors could come from Africa. Your ancestors could come from somewhere up north where it's snowy, whatever, the Caribbean or Caribbean, however you say it. We're Southern people, we butcher those words. But the point is that physical characteristics are always going to exist, which means people are always going to be given a reason to say you're not like me, and you know, you're different, so I don't like you, or you're worse and I'm better, whatever. Those things are always going to exist. That's why I was pointing out those, like in the SEAL teams, they did do a study. At least that's what we were told. They did a study a long time ago, and about why there were so few black people trying out to become a SEAL candidates. And they did some studies on the physical attributes of them and found that black people have 10 to 20% more testosterone, and they have a denser bone structure. So swimming doesn't come natural. But you could look at somebody from Iceland, for instance, and they're going to have physical differences. They're going to have things in their body. Or somebody from Asia. The reason I was pointing that out is racists will always look towards those things to further their prejudice and say, you're different, you're not like me, and therefore, let me turn this off here, hold on. And therefore, I'm better, or, you know, something, they'll come up with something. But the other thing is, you know, a lot of racism that happens in this country, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I wish I would have brought this up with Burgess here, is that I don't think it has to do with those physical characteristics. I think it's easy for liberal leftists to use those physical differences to say that guy thinks that that black person is different, or is different, and so they're a racist, and they say this, that, whatever. A lot of the reasons why people feel the way they do about each other in this country has to do with our behavior, less than it has to do with physical differences anymore. There was a time, I think, in this country, I know it was in this country, where physical differences played a huge part in racism and prejudice. You look different, so you're worse than me. That's what people would say. That's the way they felt. Now, in this day and age, the reality is that behaviors either give, like, let's say you go to an inner city and you get mugged, or you go on the train and you get mugged by somebody who has dark skin or white skin or whatever. You could then turn around and base your entire opinion on anybody that looks like that individual, which is stupid, but that's the way it happens. And when you look at stuff like Chicago in the inner city and the amount of black-on-black crime, the amount of gangs, whether it's more or less, here's the interesting thing about it. It's what the media shows. Now, isn't that interesting? They show the crime in the inner city. They show these things that are happening. And that ends up influencing people's thoughts to where they say, I'm not going to go anywhere around the inner city because everybody there that looks like this is bad. And I find it very interesting how the very thing that can cause people to further that kind of stupid thought is the very thing that is pushed by the left and the mainstream media. They don't report the reality of statistics a lot of the times. They don't have conversations like Burgess and I just had right there. And the reality is they use division to push their communist ways. The NAACP or any other group like that, I've never seen one that literally goes out to bridge the gaps. It's not like that. They always want to either make the gap wider or they want to dominate other people. You're never going to bridge a gap by trying to dominate each other. It's just going to cause more of a rift. Anyway, it's a sticky situation to talk about this stuff because people take it out of context. But that's the reality of this whole thing, is that people in power don't want to fix it. They want to utilize it. And as Burgess said, the only thing that's going to fix this in this country is if we fix it. We have to, and I preach that all the time. That's why I thought it was amazing when I was on Newsmax with him the other day, and he was saying all this stuff. It's pretty amazing. Anybody got any questions? Let me see on here. I think we've been having some super trolls over here on Twitter. I'm just letting these Twitter people trolls go. I'll block them every now and then, but the reality is they're a good example. I think if people can get past them and not react to them, they're a good example of the left and a good example of the craziness that is a part of the left. So if somebody comes on that's a troll, either don't react to them. If it's really vile, if I see it, I'll block them. Anybody else got anything? All right. That's an hour show. I think that's good. Actually, you know what? Before I go, let me just play a little bit more of Trump's speech here because I think it's important, and I'd love to mess with liberals. So, all right, let's play some more.
Stop. Radical.
All right, hold on.
Islamic terrorism. Because we cannot allow it to tear up our nation and indeed to tear up the entire world. We cannot let a murderous regime continue these destabilizing activities while building dangerous missiles, and we cannot abide by an agreement if it provides cover for the eventual construction of a nuclear program. We seek an approach to refugee resettlement that is designed to help these horribly treated people and which enables their eventual return to their home countries to be part of the rebuilding process. For the cost of...
Now, I love this that's coming up right here. The president's about to point out the fact that bringing somebody over here, how much more it costs than if we keep people in the region that they're at and take care of them there. I've been saying this for the longest time, whether it's refugees or whether it is missionaries that go down into these dangerous countries, these untrained Christians that go to other countries and literally risk their lives, much cheaper to bring one of them here, train them, and let them go back and work with their own people than to go down there and risk massive amounts of people. When they leave, nothing else really gets done. But listen to this.
Resettling one refugee in the United States, we can assist more than 10 in their home region. Out of the goodness of our hearts, we offer for...
I'm going to play that again.
We can assist more... Cost of resettling one refugee in the United States, we can assist more than 10 in their home region. Out of the goodness of our hearts, we offer financial assistance to hosting countries in the region, and we support recent agreements of the G20 nations that will seek to host refugees as close to their home countries as possible. This is the safe, responsible, and humanitarian approach. The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me. The Venezuelan people are starving, and their country is collapsing. Their democratic institutions are being destroyed.
Now, this is really important for you to listen to here, because as I was talking about earlier, the president doesn't make a threat or an ultimatum without saying that we're actually here to help, which he does with Venezuela.
This situation is completely unacceptable, and we cannot stand by and watch. As a responsible neighbor and friend, we and all others have a goal. That goal is to help them regain their freedom, recover their country, and restore their democracy. We are prepared to take further action if the government of Venezuela persists on its path to impose authoritarian rule on the Venezuelan people. Major portions of the world are in conflict, and some, in fact, are going to hell. But the powerful people in this room, under the guidance and auspices of the United Nations, can solve many of these vicious and complex problems. God bless you. God bless the nations of the world. And God bless the United States of America. Thank you very much.
That's awesome. No, we don't want to watch another speech here. You know, after conversations like this, hello, Kitty Kelly, by the way, and the guy that I was trying to figure out his name, the idiot from the NAACP, is Benjamin Jealous. That guy, first off, I don't know, he's an idiot. Let's just leave it at that. I pulled out my Glock. So after having conversations like that, it makes you reflect, sit back and reflect, folks, on a lot of things. And the reality is, you know, I'm glad Kitty Kelly just tuned in here. All the other veterans that are on here, nurses, police officers, moms, dads. In order to be successful, you have to be able to think and come up with realistic, effective solutions to problems. I quite frankly am not going to lie, I'm sick of speeches. I give speeches, I get paid for giving speeches. I wish I could get paid to give more of them. But I'm tired of speeches. Politicians speak. That's why those conventions were so... I couldn't watch them anymore. It was just one long-winded person after another. People can talk all they want, but effective solutions are so easy to come up with. I don't understand why we're so comfortable in this country with having such simple issues to fix appear so complicated, and we just buy off on it. I don't know. I don't know, folks. It's puzzling to me why we are so comfortable living. When you look at the Constitution, the very first thing it says in there is, we the people. We the people. We need to get back to that. Nobody should be comfortable in this nation with even the possibility or even the thought of your freedom being restricted or taken away. You shouldn't even be comfortable with that. Let's go to the Truth Zone. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it. You know, one of the reasons why I do this Truth Zone thing is because I like getting fired up. And this show was so great. Listening to somebody like Burgess, I do disagree with one thing that he says. And when we talk again, I'll tell him this. I'm not comfortable. And I think it's something we should get away with from is the speech of saying young black men. I grew up a young white man. I had no opportunities. I was poor. I didn't have handouts. I suffered, and young people, no matter whether they're black or white, suffer, whether they're man or woman, male or female, suffer from the same subversive tactics, being indoctrinated into their heads. It doesn't really matter whether they're black or white. That is something that has been, the use of that has been perfected by the left. There will always be racism in this world. Always. If there are two people and one is different than the other, unless they're identical twins, there's going to be racism. But I would like to get away from the term racism. I would like to get away from the terms race. Because I think we've grown in this country and in this world to a point where our minds far surpass our physical abilities. And the ability for us to truly look at another human being and say, the person that exists within that physical body is good or bad. And isn't that the very essence of how you judge the character of a man, of a woman? We don't look at, liberals, listen to me for a minute. You don't look at somebody who's gay and say they are a man or a woman. You like to point out the sexual characteristics, or if they're white or black. If they have a preference that makes them gay, they're gay. Why is it then that if a man raises up and is a great leader, if a woman raises up as a great leader, that they're defined by their gender or by their color or their sexuality? They are either great or they are not as leaders. They are either good people or they are not, as based on their behaviors. They are either people of God or they are not. And as I've heard other people say, I would rather not hang out with people that are not of God. But here's the close to this, is I just think that this country has gone far enough to where we should be able to judge each other based on the content of who we are as a person, regardless of the color, the gender, or the sexuality. If you're not a good person, then you should be judged as such. And I think we have gotten to a point where we, as an American citizenry, should stand together and stop dividing ourselves. They're doing it enough already. I'm Jonathan Gillum. My good buddy Rico's down there curled up underneath this chair. I will see you tomorrow, right here, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. This is The Experts. The truth has arrived. How many of you are prepared for an incident like this? Get my new book, Sheep No More, The Art of Awareness and Attack Survival, and I will teach you to think like an attacker so you can truly defend yourself. Don't just react, act. Available for pre-order now on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Sheep No More. Get it.